Life Audio.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
We want families to come here and gain insightful strategies that empower them to successfully teach diverse learners at home.
Hosted by founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, Peggy Ployer.
Our goal is that these powerful weekly conversations will boost your confidence to cultivate the best at-home learning environment for your student.
For more homeschool resources, go to spedhomeschool.com. You're listening to Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer. We'll start the conversation with Peggy and her guests next.
The best-selling illustrative Bible for kids and teens, the Action Bible, is now better than ever. The Action Bible Faith in Action Edition is an interactive Bible specifically created for kids and teens ages 7 to 15. The Faith in Action Edition is designed to engage young readers in God's Word through hundreds of vividly illustrated Bible stories in chronological order with activities and games. Readers will grow in God's Word by using QR codes, providing free access to over 2,000 devotionals, hundreds of prayers, character stories, teaching videos, maps, timelines, and much more. Additionally, the Action Bible Faith in Action Edition allows readers to explore the major themes of the Bible like courage, faith, hope, love, service, trust, and wisdom. Each theme provides practical advice on how to live out God's Word. The Action Bible Faith in Action Edition is the best interactive Bible you can purchase for your child or teen. Purchase your copy today at Sam's Club, Barnes & Noble, or Amazon.
Everyone wants to change the world. Capital Ministries is doing just that, one heart at a time, by creating disciples of Jesus Christ among political leaders in the U.S. and foreign nations. For more than 25 years, founder Ralph Drollinger has written Bible studies specifically for public servants. Study along with us and learn what the Bible says about capitalism, communism, abortion, same-sex marriage, and other contemporary issues. Subscribe and follow us at lifeaudio.com or search Capital Ministries on your favorite podcast platform.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com. Here's Peggy Ployer.
Today, we are going to talk about executive functioning behavior strategies for parents. And my special guest today is Karen Haggard. Karen is... She holds both a BA in special education and an MEd in reading from Harding University. She's taught for over 20 years in a variety of classroom settings, including elementary and special education, high school Spanish, and college English. She's been a dyslexia tutor since 2015 and is certified at the advanced level in the Barton program. She trained with Susan Barton to become a Barton screener and consultant. And if you're unfamiliar with the Barton reading and spelling system, you can learn more on her website about that. But Karen is also certified by the Texas Education Agency of Special Education by the Association of Christian Schools International as a reading specialist, and also an associate educational therapist and a member of AET, the educational therapy that she helps students with who have broad reading, writing, or math difficulties, or who struggle with executive functioning skills, which we'll be talking about today, like time management, organization, self-regulation, flexibility, and task initiation. Welcome, Karen. I'm super excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Peggy. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, yes. So what drives your passion to work with students? I always want, know a little bit of background about the people that we interview, and especially homeschooling students, because I know a lot of your background for quite a while was in the school system, but I know now your business helps a lot of homeschool families as well.
Well, yes, and I was also a homeschool mom for many years. I think I wanted to be a teacher from the time I was probably 10.
Wow.
And I had a cousin who was special needs. She passed a long time ago, but she probably is the catalyst that prompted me to pursue special education.
That's very cool. It's interesting how people in our lives can just affect us so much like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, very neat. Well, we're going to talk about executive functioning. And I know when we talked a little bit the pre-show, and you had talked about how you were doing a lot of dyslexia tutoring, those things, and now your team does a lot of that. So it's not that you don't do that a lot with your business, but that executive functioning has become one of those things that you love to focus on. Why is that? And how have you seen that affect the students that you work with when you focus on these things?
Well, when I first started working with students with dyslexia, both adults and children, which I did in my early years, almost 10 years ago, I quickly saw that dyslexia was not their only struggle. They always also have executive function struggles. And so in seeing that, and obviously we were addressing their reading and writing issues, but I wanted to do something that addressed those other perimeter struggles that also impacted school and life, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
And so just began learning more about executive function. That kind of led me into the field of educational therapy. I attended a conference put on by AET in Dallas a number of years ago. And that was really my first exposure to the field of educational therapy. I'd never heard of it. And just became more and more fascinated by that type of practice, which was really similar to what we were already doing with dyslexia therapy, just with a different focus in those sessions. And so just kind of began learning more and more about how to help kids with those different types of struggles. And you know, you can certainly apply those in a dyslexia session, you know, in some, you know, 5-minute bites, if you will. But sometimes that's not, you know, not really enough. It can help in the session. It can help the teacher in the session to deal with those behaviors. It can help make those sessions more manageable and more successful. But what about the other 23 hours of the day?
Which parents, you know, that's the part that, you know, we live in, and it's like, the struggle. And
exactly.
So what exactly are executive functions, and what you talked when you gave me things that you wanted to talk about? You talked about naming, and so what is the power in that, and exactly what is it?
Okay. So that has kind of become my own spin on executive function coaching. I know other therapists do similar things, and it's a really important part. But it is, to me, it is the most important part of teaching executive function. And that is just simply, I always start with teaching about the brain in whatever capacity that child can learn the words, even the vocabulary of the parts of the brain. You know, I have 5-year-olds that have gone back to their kindergarten teacher and told them all about the amygdala and what it does. And they love to teach those words to other people. They come back and we talk about, you know, what the different parts of the brain do and what they control. And I just think there's power in that, in teaching them that this is, it's a part of who we are, and we can change it. And that's just amazing to me, the neuroscience behind that. And so to teach that to kids, like I said, from 5-year-olds all the way through teenagers, I think is really powerful to teach them that vocabulary. And that's always where I start. And then moving from the brain to the different executive functions themselves and what that means. Of course, always teaching on an age-appropriate level in terms of, but again, 5-year-olds can learn what metacognition is.
Right. Yes. Yeah. You just have to put it in terms that they can understand and relate to. And that ends up being that. Yeah. But I think the power in all of that is you have the ability to improve this, to change this. That our brain just isn't static. We have this ability, this plasticity, and when kids understand that, they control that superpower, it allows them to realize, I'm not stuck. I think we live in a society so much that labels kids and says, this is who you are, this is where you're at, and just deal with it. Instead of, you have the power to do something about this. And I just applaud you for coming at it from that direction, because, God made us to be the best that we can be. And when we encourage kids to do that, they will embrace that. They want to get better. It's just that too often we tell them these things that get them in that cycle that they feel like there's just no way out. And so, yes, there's so much power in that. After a word from our sponsor, we'll dive back into this conversation. The best-selling illustrated Bible for kids and teens, the Action Bible, is now better than ever. The Action Bible Faith in Action Edition is an interactive Bible specifically created for kids and teens ages 7 to 15. The Faith in Action Edition is designed to engage young readers in God's Word through hundreds of vividly illustrated Bible stories in chronological order with activities and games. Readers will grow in God's Word by using QR codes, providing free access to over 2,000 devotionals, hundreds of prayers, character stories, teaching videos, maps, timelines, and much more. Additionally, the Action Bible Faith in Action Edition allows readers to explore the major themes of the Bible like courage, faith, hope, love, service, trust, and wisdom. Each theme provides practical advice on how to live out God's Word. The Action Bible Faith in Action Edition is the best interactive Bible you can purchase for your child or teen. Purchase your copy today at Sam's Club, Barnes & Noble, or Amazon.
Y'all, we all got weaknesses. It's okay. Just acknowledge what those weaknesses are and be willing to confront them. Even when restoration doesn't work, forgiveness always does. Chris, how did you overcome the whole passive husband thing?
I led him through it.
There is work for us to do. It is not just sit back and cross my arms and just kind of wait for God to drop the miracle. Hey, y'all, it's Dana Shea. For real faith-based marriage advice, be sure to tune into Real Relationship Talk on lifeaudio.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool. Go to spedhomeschool.com to get resources and support for teaching your unique learner at home.
So specifically, as far as executive functioning goes, there's a whole pile of things within executive functioning. So what are the names of that? Because I think probably more parents are going to understand that when you start describing them versus this whole umbrella of executive functioning.
Right. Yeah. And that is, you'll find a variety of different lists if you were to do a Google search of executive functions. But generally, there's, anywhere between 9 and 12. Some people break it down even more and come up with 15 or 16. But I use a list that comes from one of the resources that I gave you called Pathway to Success. She has broken it down into 10 executive functions, the creator of that content. And her list consists of planning, organization, task initiation, metacognition, which is for most people a new term or sometimes, and we definitely focus on that one with kids. Time management, self-control, perseverance, flexibility, attention, and working memory. And so that, teaching about the brain and then teaching about executive functions, you can see that takes some time. But again, going back to that vocabulary and how important it is to teach them about these parts of our behavior and our ability to control how we react to things and that kind of thing is just super, super important. And so then they have names, they have words. Yes. And you have words as the parent or the teacher to say, what about task initiation in this? Or are you exhibiting good self-control? What are our strategies?
Right. Instead of just boiling it down to all about this is you and you're not doing it right. You know, this is part of the process that is not happening correctly. And how can we change that?
Yeah.
And so it's not about changing you personally, like internally, you know, we want to make you into a different person, but we want to change some behavior. and that's related to that. Yeah.
As strengths and weaknesses. You know, we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses.
Absolutely.
In executive functions. And I think it's really important. I always tell kids, you know, when we're talking about, you know, some of the different executive functions, I even tell them, you know, this is one I have to work on. And I think that's really important. And I think it's especially important for parents to, you know, let their kids see that this is an area of weakness for them as well. And you're working on it together. I think that's super empowering. You know, when we are in teaching and evaluating with dyslexia, when I do an evaluation with a student, I always ask parents, who else in your family has dyslexia? And if the child knows who that person is, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, I think it's so helpful for them to say, you know what, just like Aunt Tracy, I have dyslexia, and this makes life a little challenging, but we're in this together.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Trissy had asked if we could list those again. And I did put the link into the feed on both YouTube and Facebook. I will also, when we're finished with the show, put a link to that resource in the show notes so that you can click on that too. But it's thepathwaytosuccess.com. It's that executive functioning skills. It's a longer URL, so I'm not going to put it up on the screen. But I did share it in the comments, and we will share it in the show notes too.
Yeah, and I used just a ton of those resources from that.
Okay. Yeah.
From her.
So that's awesome. And Sue just said thank you too. So you're welcome. Awesome. Well, yes. And having those names for those things, I think is just it, like you going back to what you were saying before. It allows us as parents to have those discussions without the frustration, I think. Because, you know, you can't wrap your mind around exactly what you're trying to talk about. It all just boils down to, you're just not doing it right, you know, and we can't figure out, you know, how to get from the point we're at now to where we want our child to be. And we don't want to be frustrated with them, but we're so frustrated with not understanding what's going on that it makes the whole ordeal kind of explode when it really doesn't need to, if we have the right understanding. Yeah. And I just, like I said, I just feel like the starting place for that conversation is in teaching the vocabulary. Yes. Yeah.
So, and I use two main resources, although I know we've listed 4 or 5. But the Pathway to Success is one place that actually gives you the tools to even do self-evaluations, which is really the next step for a child. And it really doesn't matter how old they are. Even a 5-year-old can look at, you know, once you've taught those executive function terms, you can look at that and say, well, do you think that you have good self-control? Right. Do you always get started with your work when I ask you to do it, or when you're asked to do it? Or, you know, what's your bedroom look like? We need to work on organization there. You know?
If they think it looks fine, take a picture. And
yeah. Right, exactly. And but at the same time, say, you know what? When you get started on something, you have really good perseverance. You keep working until you're finished. And so in this area, this is your strength. And so I think that's a really important thing as well, to always point out those strengths as well, because that's empowering also.
It is too. So then like you had talked about earlier, there will be things that our child, as well as us, struggle with long-term. It's just one of those, you know, executive functioning things that our brain just will not latch on too quickly. And, we do have to figure out some supports or scaffolding. It's just like my planners, the multiple ones I have and timers and things that ding because I even forget to eat. It's things like that, you can, like you said, you can have those strengths and weaknesses, but then you do know where to start looking for resources too, versus this is just always a frustration and I don't even know where to start with this. So, yeah.
Well, and then obviously the ultimate goal as your child grows and matures is for them to take over the monitoring of those.
Yes.
But if they know what their areas of weakness are and they've learned some strategies, then even if as they get older those strategies need to change or shift a little bit because of different circumstances, they go to college, whatever it is, they've got a foundation in order to do that.
Right.
And if they've already been practicing strategies since they were younger, they're going to be able to apply those to their new situations.
That is so true. Yes. Yeah. The earlier, the better. And like you were saying, 5, they can start this at.
Absolutely.
So start early, get them going, let them fail within your house. I think we had that conversation last week. Failure, if you don't allow failure, you don't allow learning.
That's right.
And I loved that quote, but yes, we want them to be able to learn all of those things. So they are prepared to make those decisions, change those things on their own. And my daughter just started college this year. And of course, she had to take all online courses because she registered so late. One of those executive functioning skills. And I was like, oh no, I've heard that online classes are really hard. And so she's got 5 things to do this week and she's trying to juggle them. And, she's persevering through it though. And But yeah, it's those skills. You can't just instantly learn them. Those are things that take a long time. So yeah. So we have quite a few people they're like, I'm sorry, I joined late. Well, you haven't missed too much. There's a link up above that lists some of the things that Karen listed out as far as executive functioning skills. And we're just kind of starting to dive into that. So I think my next question for you is, what types of struggles do we see most around each of these skills? I
think probably the biggest place is just knowing where to start, teaching them how to recognize even what poor self-control looks like.
Right.
And so, you can look at certain behaviors that they've had, use something that happened yesterday that they're going to still remember.
Right.
And say, what about in this situation? And talk about, whether they think that they had good self-control, or whether, you can't find your homework for co-op, or
right.
What's the cause of that? Okay, so you don't know where it is. You did it. Let's go look at your room.
Right.
Let's look at your backpack. Let's get to the root of the problem. And some tools that I like to use. I also use another resource called Boys Town Press. And Boys Town caught my attention decades ago. I taught in a public school in Arlington, Texas. That was the school was a brand new reorganized school and had, on the first day of school, had 950 kids, all with lots of executive function struggles. It was a rough school, and the first year was rocky, and we were brand new faculty, had been pulled from a variety of different places, and it was a rough year. I mean, we're talking, it's now a part of town that is probably considered, gangs and ghettos and that kind of thing.
Wow.
And of course it was an elementary school, but we were trying to curtail behaviors at, young ages. And so we were just, trying to figure out what to do. And Boys Town had a curriculum that you could teach that taught appropriate behaviors in a very systematic, very intentional way. And it turned that school around.
Wow.
And I've always remembered that. It just left an impression on me forever. And so when I discovered Boys Town Press, which comes from the same Boys Town,
very cool.
It definitely kept my attention, and their resources are really, really good for teaching executive functions. And they would be very easy to use in a homeschool setting or a co-op or whatever, because they're just really, you can, for a $15 investment, you've got an entire executive function curriculum for one particular executive function. So
wow,
that is one
That's
of
really
the
cool.
resources that I gave you.
Yep. Yeah, I copied that link and put it in the feed, both on Facebook and YouTube. And again, we'll put it in the show notes. So yeah. What age is that geared for?
Well, it's really from, even probably 4-year-olds or even younger, all the way through teen years. And they've got different resources for different age ranges. So they really haven't left anybody out.
Right.
And the ones that I use the most typically are storybooks. I think I have one. So like, for instance, this one is called Time to Get Started. And so that's for somebody who struggles with task initiation. And the characters are very relatable. They're kids their age who are struggling with that executive function. And it usually gives, the storyline has a home component and parent talking to the child, and then also going to school and having the same struggles at school. And usually the parent has talked to the teacher, so the teacher knows what the executive function is that they're trying to work on. But it gives a strategy, usually 3 or 4 steps that are very easy to follow.
So it takes all the guesswork out.
Ways to practice it. And then the Boys Town has also included these little little posters that you can put up.
Yes. So every time your child walks by them, they will see them and remember them. And yes, those are awesome.
And then there's downloadable activities also, where you can, discuss and talk through the strategy in a variety of different fun ways to then practice the strategies that the book teaches. So these could be used in, like I said, a homeschool situation with just one child or 2 children, or a co-op, or, whatever kind of a situation. But they're super, super helpful. And for me, one-on-one in a therapy situation, they work great.
Very cool. We've already had a couple questions, and I know we have quite a few as far as ones that came in previous to the discussion as well. And so just know that we are going to get to your questions. We're going to try to finish just the kind of the groundwork here of getting through some of the things that Karen wants you all to know about. And then we'll go start diving into your specific questions. So don't think that we're ignoring you. I have starred the ones that are questions, and I will make sure we get back to those while we are on this talk. So you said that you have some exercises that help identify strengths and weaknesses. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. Actually, what I use a couple of different things. There is one that I use in therapy sessions when I have somebody who's brought their child for executive function coaching or any kind of ed therapy that is obviously rooted in executive function issues. There's a executive function survey called The Brief, and it's through PAR Inc., which is a school resource. But those same principles of self-evaluation, and also a parent looking through and answering some questions about their child to determine where their strengths and weaknesses are. Another way to do that is also to, if they're in any kind of a co-op or maybe a Sunday school teacher or another adult, because, parents don't always have the most.
Yes, we kind of compensate for our kids. That's, yes.
Yeah. I think as soon as the child is able to do some self-evaluation, you want to allow them to be a part of that evaluation. But Pathway to Success has a whole bunch of different executive function quizzes that you answer questions, and it guides you through. It's something you could do with your child. If they're a little older, they can answer for themselves, and you can talk about it. And anyway, it helps to identify strengths and weaknesses for all of the different executive functions.
That's great. Yes. So I'm just going to list that general website for them too, that you shared. We'll share that in the feed as well. So yeah, those checklists can be really helpful, because I think we already have some questions coming in saying, what about this, and how do I, know what's involved with executive functioning, and so that is helpful. So
I think for any child,
I was
just going to say, for any child that's even 8, 9, 10, once you've taught that list of executive function vocabulary, I think it's really good to say, okay, we're going to do some self-evaluations, but first, I want you to decide, which do you think are the 3 that you have the most difficulty with? I think it's really important for them to be thinking in those terms even before they do the self-evaluation.
That's a good idea. Yeah. And what about, do those evaluations only focus on the deficits, or do they focus on the strengths as well?
No, it focuses on both strengths and weaknesses.
Good. Yes. Yeah. That's extremely helpful.
It is.
So awesome. All right. So as far as strategies, should we just kind of dive into some of the questions, and then if there's any other strategies that you think of afterwards that we maybe didn't address in the question specifics, we can head back to there. I'm going to address the ones that are live right now. Lisa had asked, what if my teen has not been practicing strategies since younger? You always feel like, I caught my son's dyslexia when he was 16, and I just felt like I was such a failure as a homeschool parent. Your child's learning as an adult too. But what are some things that, they could start doing right now if they haven't been working on these since a young age?
Well, I think the process or the procedure is the same, no matter whether they're 5 or 16. I think teaching a little bit about the brain, a little bit about neuroscience to a 16-year-old, I think even asking them, you seem to be really struggling with this. Would you like to do something to try and help, give you some strategies to deal with this a little bit more easily? This, and if they don't see that, which is possible, sometimes.
Yeah, she said that
her self-aware.
Her child also has memory issues, so so that might be a component as well.
Well, obviously memory is a huge part of it. And I will say another huge part of my practice is I am an Equipping Minds therapist. And I know you've had Dr. Carol Brown on here. And so if that is a struggle and you feel like that's probably maybe the underlying weakness that's causing a lot of other issues, I would not hesitate to direct them to Equipping Minds, because for processing problems, for memory issues, for cognitive flexibility, which are all, you can see how they're all tied together. Those are all going to be addressed in Equipping Minds. And I can't say enough. Our whole practice has gone almost half to Equipping Minds. We have 5 Equipping Minds therapists that are working in that program now. So it's amazing.
Yeah, it is an amazing program. And, I've done some stuff with Carol, and she's used those cards with me, and I've interviewed her a couple times on the show, and it feels like my brain's growing while I'm doing it. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
So I have to put my little plug in for her too.
With adults who have processing issues, post concussion syndrome.
Yes.
And it's just amazing. But
and strokes. I think she's worked with people who've had strokes before.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's quite
exactly.
amazing.
So, so that, that would address that. But if that's one of the underlying issues, then that's, it's the same thing. It's the same process. You identify the strengths and weaknesses. You learn about the different executive functions, and you say, let's find some strategies. Let's work on some ways to address these issues. And like I said, Boys Town and Pathway to Success has resources to help facilitate that learning for at all ages. So it's not too late, no matter what.
No, it really isn't. I mean, even as adults, it's still not too late. You're finding, I know. Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you reevaluated your organization method for, and
often
to a different process or different procedure?
Right.
We all need to be evaluating those processes in ourselves. So.
Yes, absolutely. It's an ongoing process in itself. Yeah. So we had another viewer ask, Angie had said, what are some suggestions for school when dealing with a student with executive functioning when they state their brain has shut off?
I think you need to kind of talk through why. Is it because they're frustrated because the material's gotten too hard, or is it because they're distracted by something else? I mean, it could be a variety of things. So that would be really where to start, is to help them determine, what's the barrier here? What's causing the shutdown?
Right.
And I think the process is the same. I think teaching those executive function vocabulary, and, looking at that and because it sounds, for something like that, there would be some underlying reason, and it's going to be different for each student.
Right. And that's harder to determine if the child is in school, because you're not there always observing. As a parent, I can change the atmosphere and say, oh, we're doing better here versus here. So, we're taking out some, like you said, the distractions, the work we can change almost instantly. But when you're in a school system, that all is variables you don't have control over, and it makes it much more difficult. And kids shut down for a variety of reasons.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It may be bullying. I mean, it could be a whole slew of anything.
Are they tired? Are they hungry? Are they?
Right.
Is math being taught after lunch?
Right.
or before lunch? It could be anything.
Yeah.
But getting to the root cause is always that's kind of the premise of educational therapy, really, is getting to the root cause of a problem.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, because I mean, like you said, you had these students that came in with dyslexia, but then you're realizing they had executive functioning issues, and yes, there still is something with the brain that's making the dyslexia there, but when you clear up so many other things, then it makes everything else so much easier to teach towards.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because otherwise we just feel like we're banging our head against the wall. Nothing's happening.
That's actually what led me to Equipping Minds, was finding something that would, for most of our students, the method that we use with the Barton program works really, really well. Right. But some will sometimes get to like a plateau, or just they seem to hit a barrier and they're not making much progress. And that's so frustrating for the child.
Right.
And the parent who's paying the bill.
Right.
And so, I was just looking for any way to help remove that. And Equipping Minds, we've been in business for for over 7 years. And I have never recommended that a child take off for the summer. Parents always, and I make that clear right up front, they need to work straight through the summer. We don't take off for the summer.
Right.
But after starting Equipping Minds and seeing the progress that kids make after they do the Equipping Minds program, I, for the first time this last summer, after doing this for 1.5 years, I actually recommended to several students, parents, that we take the summer off from dyslexia tutoring and do Equipping Minds. And it's just amazing how much faster their dyslexia therapy is going after doing that. So,
and kids feel like they're playing games when they're doing it. So it really doesn't seem like it's hard work. I mean, it does feel on your brain. It does feel like it's working, but it's gameplay, and it makes it so much more fun. Yeah, absolutely. So, well, that's really cool. So I'm going to leave this up to you. We had quite a few questions that came in ahead of time, and I can throw them up on the screen whatever order you would like to address them. So Is there one specifically that you want to start with?
Let me look and see. I did print them out. So I'll tell you what, I'll just, I'll just start at the top of what you gave me earlier.
Okay.
And so, Sarah H says, are there quick techniques? Okay. And so I actually went into the story, the Boys Town Press story, and the book for that I would recommend is called Of Course It's a Big Deal. And it's about getting control of a situation and not overreacting to it. And so the storyline teaches about a little boy who's having problems, having meltdowns and getting upset, and not then being able to see his way out of that, because that's typically what happens. Once it starts, they don't have a strategy for how to get out of it.
Right. And
sometimes they even verbalize later, I just didn't know what else to do. I was stuck. And that's when the meltdown happens. So the story, Of Course It's a Big Deal, gives this 4-part strategy. And some of it's going to sound familiar, but I think giving kids 4 things to do.
Yes.
In a specific order, and practicing that in a when it's a calm situation, is really important. And that's what this resource does, is it provides multiple ways to do that and to learn that strategy. So the first strategy is pause and try to stay calm. It teaches deep breaths or counting to 10, which sounds familiar. We all know that.
Right.
Think of a way to make the situation better. Is there an exit plan? Is there, can I remove myself, or can I ask somebody to repeat their question? Or, it goes through several different things. And then try it out. I need to, practice my strategy in the moment, or try out the strategy, or the exit plan, or asking a question or whatever. And then if nothing else works and you can't figure out, ask for help. Go to the teacher, go to the parent and say, I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Yes.
And, I think sometimes kids think they have to do it on their own without asking.
Right.
And I think that's an important thing.
When you hit that panic mode, you get that fight or flight. It does feel like the world, all that pressure is on you, and you've got to do something personally about it. And I guess that, that idea of reaching out doesn't seem like the first thing you should do, but like practicing will make that more natural. Yeah. So going through those steps multiple times, like I said, the little visual that you can put on the refrigerator or in their notebook, when they're going to school or going to co-op or, wherever, or on a 3x5 card if they need to carry it with them, to the mall, or, wherever the trouble spots seem to be, if they can have it as a visual. And if they're not a reader yet,
create icons,
Right. Yeah.
That have, that they know the meaning of, and will be reminders of those strategies.
Yeah. You could even create a little bracelet with different
Yep.
colored beads, and each of those beads would be one of those different strategies, and then it would be on them all the time. Yeah. So there's so many different ways to help out, because when that panic mode does set in, it is really hard. Well, you can't teach in it, definitely. But the more you prepare ahead of time and give them that reminder, the easier it's going to be.
And all they have to remember in that moment is the first step.
Right. Exactly.
And if they've practiced it over and over, and talked it through, and that's the best way. Yeah,
absolutely.
And then a really important component of that too is evaluate it.
Yes.
You get home,
so you will have to change it properly.
and that they had a near miss, of losing control in a certain situation. Talk it through. Let them talk about it, how they felt, and if they were successful, even if it's just part of the way, then talk about that, and talk about, is there something they could do differently next time? Or did they just knock it out of the ballpark? That's a big win, and they need to know that.
Absolutely. Yes. It happens little by little, that progress is what we have to celebrate, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Amy had asked, can you give us some examples of how to teach these skills?
Well, like I said,
gone through some of that.
Yeah. I think, like I said, teaching about the brain.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be complicated. I have a little, a visual that I just got online, and it's called The Amazing Brain. And I didn't even have a resource link to give you, because I'm not even sure where it came from, but it's just a very simple, it talks about the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus and the amygdala. And that's really all I teach. But those big old words, and they love to learn those words.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But they can learn that the prefrontal cortex is where we learn to make choices. And that's the, that's how we pay attention. And that's helps us to learn things. And then the hippocampus is going to help us to remember what we learned. And it stores our memories. And that's, what we're going to pull from when we're trying to remember something that we learned yesterday, or, and then the amygdala is, it's the part that melts down, but it's also the part that keeps us safe if we're in a situation where we need that flight or flight that you mentioned before.
Right.
So I think being able to recognize those are really... Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. To give those a vocabulary and the ability to just say, this is what's going on inside, because otherwise the meltdowns happen and we have no idea. And, they get blamed for bad behavior, but there's always something behind that they're trying to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not about the behavior. It's whatever led up to it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So Heidi asked, she said, I have a 6-year-old with Down syndrome. Is there sometimes a regression issue with certain areas like letter sounds?
I think she's maybe this is more of a reading issue. Yeah. I think that's probably a working memory problem most of the time. And so working on, using working memory exercises, which there's, if you were to Google working memory activities, you would find all kinds. But I will say, if you were to go to Equipping Minds,
I was just going to say that.
There's actually, so the curriculum, the way it's the way you can access the curriculum for Equipping Minds is through what Carol calls the Roses program. And Rose is actually a person with Down syndrome.
Yes.
And her story is amazing. I actually got to meet Rose, and she graduated from junior community college, I think last year or maybe this year. I can't remember the time frame. But so if you are, looking for something to address those working memory and those cognitive flexibility and processing skills, especially, which of course are all just so intermingled with executive function issues and struggles, that I definitely would encourage her to go look at Equipping Minds. And you'll see some videos of Rose.
Yes. And I think that kind of answers Rich's question too about executive functioning tools long-term, because you do see what Equipping Minds does. It does affect the pathways of the brain long-term. Yes. Yep. So I'll go on to the next question then. Okay. Elizabeth asked, she said, help, I have an 8-year-old that leaves a trail of destruction behind him everywhere he goes. We are starting OT, but I recognize that I need help in my own mindset when it comes to helping keep the house organized for everyone in it. Advice.
Okay, well, first of all, I would say start small. Don't have, and manage expectations, both for the child and for yourself. And I, again, back to being able to let your child know that you deal with this as well. I think that's huge. And, we're going to work on this together, buddy. And that there's just real power in that. And
absolutely,
kids love to point out when we haven't followed through with something. And I would say, give them permission to do that as a partner in that process, as long as they're, respectful and following still the standards of your household, allowing them to partner with you in that as you both work on it. But again, start small, manage expectations, but then it's just the same process that I've already mentioned. Talk about it. Talk about what part of the brain is struggling, what's not connecting there, but that you're going to work on it, learn some strategies. And there's actually several of the Boys Town books and sections that actually deal specifically with those types of organization. And I will say that one of the things about organization, which is one of the major executive functions, we think about that being a backpack issue or a bedroom issue, or like she said, the trail of destruction.
Right.
But organization, the same part of the brain that, either allow somebody to keep their backpack organized and keep track of their stuff is also the same part of the brain that when you read a passage, allows you to organize the material in it.
Oh, wow.
Are you able to put that in, make sense of it? And it's the same brain function essentially, that does those two things. And you wouldn't think that would be the same thing, but it's organization.
Yeah. It's organization data in your brain versus physically.
Yeah. If you're asking somebody to write a summary, you're asking them to organize what they just read.
Right.
So,
yeah. So reading comprehension really falls deeply into that as well, as they learn to read. Oh, that's amazing. Well, Heather asked a question. She said, my 9-year-old son tends to daydream, very slow to complete tasks. He's not necessarily being disobedient, but the behavior does cause some difficulty in completing his lessons for the day. How can I encourage him to stay focused? I've tried timers, positive reinforcement.
Okay. So this is one of the same kind of thing that I mentioned before. There's a great book in the Boys Town Press that teaches the strategies. And so I actually, again, pulled that up. The story that I picked it's called Time to Get Started. The author is Brian Smith. And it focuses on task initiation, which is one of the executive functions. And, that's a biggie. If you struggle with task initiation, there's a whole lot of things that can go wrong if you can't get started. And so one of the very first parts of the strategies is, first of all, you have to decide what it is that needs to get done. Right. Sometimes that's where the breakdown is. Yeah. If they're looking at a messy room.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't even really know what they're supposed to do there, then you need to, identify that. But then find out what's stopping you. If it's that I'm feeling overwhelmed,
right,
or I don't know what tools are available to me here. Do I have bins to put things in? Do I have, all that's an 8-year-old, that might be a struggle.
Right, exactly.
And then coming up with a plan and getting started. And then again, most of these teach self-advocacy in some way. Ask for help.
Right. Yes. We all need help.
Yeah.
We're too independent of a society, and our kids get that message that, we were making you independent, and we put all this on them, and yet they're not quite ready for that.
Well, and then as a parent, as a mom, I think it's also important to make asking for help safe.
Yes.
If your child that you sent to their room 30 minutes or 45 minutes ago to clean comes in and says, "Mom, I need help," they need to know you're not going to say, "Why haven't you gotten that room cleaned up?"
Exactly.
That's a legitimate question, and that you are going to give legitimate help and go back over the strategies with them. And so it needs to be safe to ask for help.
Yes, that's so true. Yeah. So we got a couple more questions here. Gretchen asks, how do I encourage a child with PDA to learn executive functioning skills without seeing it as a demand and shutting down?
Okay, so
it's like a pervasive development disorder.
Yeah,
I think that is
I'm
PDA.
looking for the term. I had to look it up, but it was it's the child who, if they perceive that something's going to be demanded or require of them, they shut down in that situation. So I think for starters, you've got to have buy-in from that kiddo. Yeah. And I think maybe the best way to do that is to show them the consequences of certain behavior.
Oh, yeah.
So what happens when I tell you to clean your room and you defy me or you choose not to do that? Well, there's natural consequences to that. We don't get to go to get ice cream, or we can't, or, when you come home, then you still have to clean it, or whatever that is. You can create those links. I think a lot of times kids don't see the link between their behavior and the natural consequence that they're going to feel the negativity of, and not a punishment. It's just the way it is. It's, if you don't clean your room before you leave home, you're going to come home to a dirty room. Or if your room is disorganized, you're going to maybe not find your homework when it's time to go to school. I mean, they need to see those, the link between their behavior or their choices and the natural consequence of that. And so drawing that connection for them and helping them see those can be a really powerful tool. Oh, and absolutely. So that's the place to start and get them to recognize, I don't like when I don't get to go out and play with my friends, or I don't like when I have to stay home to do something I really should have done earlier. I think I would rather choose differently next time.
Right. Yeah.
And then going from there, creating a strategy so that they do have those tools to do whatever, again, getting to the root cause of what's really causing it.
Yes. Yeah. That's great. our last question that we had. We do have a couple that are coming in live too, and I'll try to get to those as well. But she says, can you speak to FASD and its impact on executive functioning and offer advice? That's a huge one.
So, fetal alcohol syndrome.
Yeah, fetal alcohol syndrome.
Yeah. So, I think they're still kids.
Mm-hmm.
They still, you might have to repeat things a little more. You might have to practice a little more. Their processing skills and speed is going to be a little slower.
Yep.
But it's still the same principles. You don't really change anything. They need more time to process. They need more time to accomplish whatever it is that they need to do. But they're still kids, and they still need the same supports and the same processes that other kids do. So
yeah.
just more time.
Yeah, that truly is the FASD model. I have multiple siblings with FASD adopted, and my parents have just realized that the length of their learning is probably, when we consider like 17, 18, is going to be 24 to 27.
Right.
It's a longer process because there's a lot of bubbles sometimes in the brain, and those neural pathways take longer to just develop around those spaces. But they do. They do get there.
Yeah.
It's just hard because you're judging them according to their age, and they're not always right there.
You can't do that. And and there's other syndromes that have similar
yes,
paths.
exactly.
They just need more time, and you can't, and it might not always be linear. I mean, it might be a little zigzaggy.
Yes, exactly. Yes. They gotta be willing to do that. I guess the last one that I want to put up here is Lisa had asked, she said, my son states that he's lazy when I asked him why he didn't do an assignment. But she said, I don't believe it truly is laziness.
I think that's usually the case. I think he's probably heard that from somebody else.
Right.
Or not. Maybe not. Hopefully not. But there's another barrier. And I think figuring out what that is important. And helping him to see that he's not lazy, and help him. Right. I mean, again, at that age, he can go down through this same process of finding the root cause of, does he have dysgraphia? Is there something else going on there to figure out?
Right.
And maybe enlist some help. My website will be listed, I'm sure, on here.
Let me put that right up right now, because that's about time to talk about that. So if you can let parents know how to connect with you and your services. I'm going to read it just because it'll be on the podcast too. Sure. Literacy Consulting Specialties.com. And we'll also put that link in the show notes as well as the podcast notes too.
Yeah. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and you're welcome to my phone numbers. Both my cell and my office are on our website, and I welcome calls.
Yeah. So what kind of services can parents find that you guys offer?
Well, any educational therapy services, just again, getting to the root cause of any kind of a learning struggle. And even if it's not something that we can provide, helping people find resources.
Oh, that's awesome. Yep.
So.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Karen. This has been one packed hour.
It goes by really fast.
It goes by super fast. Yes. Well, we appreciate you sharing about this. As you can see by all the questions, this is just an area that a lot of parents just don't quite know what to do. And you've answered just a variety of different scenarios. So I hope that you'll all feel encouraged. I know it's been really good. I'm just the things that you've talked to. I think I wish I would have had this information when teaching my kids when they were younger.
Me too, actually.
Yeah.
There's so many things that I've learned in the last 10 years that.
Well, it's amazing, but God fills in the gaps. And so just know that, wherever you're at, just be encouraged. Take this information, however God just encourages you. Don't be anxious about it. Do where you feel peace, move forward. And I know Karen would tell you the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So one step at a time. I think we want to do everything perfect and do it all right away. And it just doesn't happen that way. So, well, thank you again, Karen, and make sure you check out her website at literacyconsultingspecialties.com, and just appreciate everything that you shared today. It was great help. We have lots of thank yous coming in on the feed. So, just thanks so much for being willing to share, and yes, and hope parents.
Pleasure, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we are going to continue focusing on behavior, and we're going to talk about natural sleep strategies. You got that child that just can't go to sleep? That's what our next episode will be about. So you'll definitely want to be back for that one. I know I even have adult children that struggle with that. So I'm hoping to learn a few things on that. I'm one of those people, I hit the pillow, I'm gone. I don't have to worry about that, but there are loved ones that are struggling. So we'll address that issue, because when you don't sleep well, it affects your entire day and your child's day. So we definitely want to help on that side too. So come back for that discussion. Otherwise, take care and God bless everybody. And we'll see you next time here. And thanks again, Karen. Really appreciate you. Okay, bye, everybody. I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer.
Is life feeling chaotic? I get it. I'm Rachel Wojo, host of the Untangling Life podcast. Don't miss the passionate encouragement and faith-based resources you need to help you clear your head and calm your heart. As Shell says, it feels like Rachel always knows what I need to hear. She keeps it real and is so humble. Her podcast is just the cherry on top. Enjoy Untangling Life with Rachel Wojo on lifeaudio.com or your favorite podcast app now.